Welcome to my channel Starwire Daily. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. In a world where fairy tales are supposed to have happy endings, sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that break our hearts. Tonight, we dive deep into the soul of one of Hollywood's most enigmatic figures. After years of silence, Johnny Depp has finally opened up about the one thing that has haunted him more than any scandal, any courtroom battle, any public controversy: love. And what he revealed will change everything you thought you knew about the man behind Captain Jack Sparrow. This is Starwire Daily, and I'm your host, bringing you inside the most intimate corners of Hollywood's biggest secrets. What you're about to hear isn't just another celebrity story. It's a confession that cuts so deep, it exposes the raw, unfiltered truth about destiny, heartbreak, and the price of fame when it collides with the human heart. Picture this: a man who has portrayed some of cinema's most beloved characters, who has made millions of people around the world believe in magic and adventure, sitting alone in his sprawling compound, reflecting on the one role he could never quite master: being truly, completely loved. You see, behind those piercing eyes and that unmistakable swagger that made him a global icon, Johnny Depp has been carrying a burden that would crush most people. And for the first time, he's ready to share it with the world. It started in the early days of his career, long before the Pirates and the Mad Hatters, when Johnny was just a young dreamer from Kentucky with calloused fingers from playing guitar and stars in his eyes. Back then, love felt simple. It felt possible. It felt destined. His first real taste of Hollywood romance came with Sherilyn Fenn, that sultry brunette beauty who captured hearts in Twin Peaks. They were both young, both hungry for success, both believers in the kind of love that songs are written about. Johnny would later confess that Sherilyn taught him what it meant to be vulnerable with another person, to let someone see past the carefully constructed walls he'd built around his heart. But as a star began to rise with 21 Jump Street, something shifted. The Johnny Depp the world fell in love with wasn't the same Johnny Depp who went home at night. The fame, the attention, the constant scrutiny, it all began to create a distance between who he really was and who everyone expected him to be. Then came Winona. Oh, Winona Ryder. If you thought their on-screen chemistry in Edward Scissorhands was electric, you should have seen them off-screen. Johnny has described meeting Winona as love at first sight that knocked the wind out of me. He was 26, she was 17, and they were both at the peak of their young careers when love hit them like lightning. The Winona Forever tattoo wasn't just ink on skin. It was a promise etched into his very soul. Johnny believed, with every fiber of his being, that Winona was his destiny. They talked about children, about growing old together, about creating a life that existed somewhere beyond the madness of Hollywood. But here's where the story takes its first heartbreaking turn. The pressure of being America's sweethearts, the constant media attention, the way their every move was dissected and analyzed, it began to poison what they had. Johnny would later reveal that watching Winona struggle with the intensity of public scrutiny was like watching someone he loved drowning, and he felt powerless to save her. The end of their engagement wasn't just a breakup. It was the first time Johnny Depp truly understood that love, no matter how pure, no matter how destined it might feel, could be destroyed by forces beyond their control. He famously altered his tattoo from Winona Forever to Wino Forever, but those close to him knew the pain ran much deeper than any needle could reach. What Johnny didn't expect was how this heartbreak would change his approach to love entirely. Enter Kate Moss, the supermodel who would become not just his girlfriend, but his partner in a kind of beautiful chaos that defined the 1990s. Their relationship wasn't built on the innocent fairy tale dreams he'd shared with Winona. This was raw, passionate, intense, and completely unpredictable. Johnny and Kate were the poster couple for living fast and hard. They partied in ways that became legendary, loved in ways that seemed to defy gravity, and fought with a passion that was equally destructive and magnetic. Johnny has admitted that Kate taught him that love didn't always have to be gentle. Sometimes it could be fierce, wild, untamed. But even that relationship, as intense as it was, couldn't survive the demons that both of them were fighting. The drugs, the alcohol, the constant travel, the way they seemed to bring out both the best and worst in each other. It all became too much. When it ended, Johnny didn't just lose a girlfriend. He lost a piece of himself that he wasn't sure he'd ever get back. And this is where Johnny's story takes a turn that no one could have predicted. After Kate, something in him shifted. He began to approach love differently, more cautiously, with walls that were higher and stronger than ever before. He threw himself into his work, disappearing into characters like Captain Jack Sparrow, finding solace in becoming other people because being himself had become too painful. Then came Vanessa Paradis, the French singer and actress who would become the mother of his children and his partner for 14 years. Johnny has described meeting Vanessa as finding peace after years of storms. She wasn't Hollywood. She wasn't caught up in the machine that had destroyed his previous relationships. She was real, grounded, and she loved him not for the character he played, but for the man he was when the cameras stopped rolling. With Vanessa, Johnny experienced a different kind of love, quieter, steadier, built on a foundation of respect and genuine partnership. They created a life together in France, far from the Hollywood spotlight, raising Lily Rose and Jack in an environment that felt more like a fairy tale than anything he'd ever experienced on screen. For 14 years, Johnny thought he'd finally found his destiny. He'd found the person who could love all of him, the artist, the father, the man still healing from old wounds. Vanessa never asked him to be anyone other than who he was, and in her arms, he began to believe in forever again. But as we all know, this story doesn't have the ending Johnny hoped for. The slow dissolution of his relationship with Vanessa was perhaps the most devastating blow of all, because it came without drama, without explosions, without anyone to blame. Sometimes love just fades. Sometimes two people who once fit perfectly together simply grow in different directions. Johnny has spoken about watching his relationship with Vanessa in like watching the sun set, slowly, inevitably, beautifully tragic. There was no betrayal, no scandal, just the quiet realization that the life they'd built together was no longer the life either of them wanted. And then came Amber Heard. If you thought Johnny's previous relationships were complicated, nothing could have prepared him, or us, for what was about to unfold. Johnny met Amber on the set of The Rum Diary in 2011, and from the very beginning, this relationship was different. Amber was young, ambitious, stunningly beautiful, and completely unafraid of Johnny's fame or his reputation. What Johnny didn't realize at the time was that he was entering the most toxic relationship of his life. Sources close to Johnny have revealed that Amber represented everything he thought he wanted: youth, passion, spontaneity. But in reality, she was a hurricane that would nearly destroy everything he'd spent decades building. The Johnny Depp who fell in love with Amber Heard was not the same man who had loved Winona or Kate or Vanessa. This was a Johnny who was vulnerable in ways he'd never been before, dealing with the death of his mother, struggling with addiction, and desperate to recapture some sense of passion in his life. Amber, according to those who witnessed their relationship, seemed to understand exactly how to manipulate Johnny's vulnerabilities. She would be loving and supportive one moment, cruel and dismissive the next. She isolated him from friends and family, made him question his own perceptions, and slowly began to dismantle the carefully constructed life he'd built. Johnny has since admitted that he lost himself completely in that relationship. The man who had always been the protector, the provider, the one who took care of others, found himself being systematically destroyed by someone who claimed to love him. The abuse, and yes, Johnny finally admits there was abuse, though not in the way the world initially believed, was psychological, emotional, and designed to break him down piece by piece. Amber, he reveals, had a talent for finding his deepest insecurities and using them as weapons. She would mock his age, his appearance, his career choices. She would threaten to leave him, then love-bomb him back into submission. She would create chaos and drama, then blame him for not being able to handle it. It was a cycle that left Johnny confused, isolated, and desperate to prove that he was worthy of love. The final blow came when Amber began to publicly paint him as an abuser, using the hashtag #MeToo movement and society's important shift toward believing women as cover for her own manipulative behavior. Johnny watched helplessly as the world turned against him, as studios dropped him from projects, as friends distanced themselves, as his reputation, built over decades, crumbled in a matter of months. But here's what Johnny wants the world to know about destiny and love, and why his revelation is so heartbreaking. After everything, after Winona, after Kate, after Vanessa, after Amber, Johnny Depp still believes in love. Despite the betrayals, despite the public humiliation, despite the financial and emotional devastation, he still believes that somewhere out there is the person meant for him. In his own words, spoken during a rare moment of vulnerability in a recent interview, "I've learned that love isn't about finding your other half. It's about being whole enough to share yourself with someone who's also whole. I spent so many years looking for someone to complete me, when what I needed was to complete myself." This is the heartbreaking truth that Johnny Depp has finally accepted. All those relationships, all that heartbreak, all that pain, it wasn't about the other person. It was about learning to love himself enough to recognize when someone else truly loves him. He admits now that with Winona, he was too young and too desperate for validation. With Kate, he was too wild and too afraid of real intimacy. With Vanessa, he was too comfortable and stopped fighting for what they had. And with Amber, he was too broken and too willing to accept treatment that no one should ever accept. But Johnny's story isn't ending in bitterness or cynicism. If anything, it's ending in wisdom. He's learned that destiny isn't about finding the perfect person. It's about becoming the person capable of having a healthy, authentic relationship. He's been working on himself, addressing his addictions, rebuilding his relationship with his children, and slowly, carefully opening his heart to the possibility of love again. But this time it's different. This time, he's not looking for someone to save him or complete him. He's looking for someone to share a complete life with. Johnny's friends say he's happier now than he's been in years. He's rediscovered his passion for music. He's selective about the acting projects he takes on. And he's built a circle of genuine friends who love him for who he is, not for what he can do for them. And love? Well, Johnny smiles when asked about it now. Love will happen when it happens, he says. I'm not chasing it anymore. I'm not forcing it. I'm just ready for it. And that's the most honest place I've ever been. The heartbreaking truth about Johnny Depp's journey through love and destiny isn't that he's been unlucky in love. It's that he's been on a journey to discover what love actually means. Each relationship, each heartbreak, each moment of joy and devastation has been preparing him for whatever comes next. He's learned that real love isn't the passionate obsession he felt with Winona, or the wild chaos he shared with Kate, or even the comfortable partnership he had with Vanessa. Real love is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing yourself well enough to recognize when someone else truly sees you and chooses to love what they see. As Johnny moves forward, he carries with him the wisdom of all his experiences. He knows now that destiny isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create through the choices you make and the person you decide to become. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most beautiful love story of all. The story of a man who lost himself in the pursuit of love, only to find himself in the acceptance of his own truth. So what do you think about Johnny's journey? Have you ever found yourself losing who you are in the pursuit of love? Have you learned to love yourself first before loving someone else? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories inspire me more than you know. If Johnny's story touched your heart the way it touched mine, hit that like button and let me know. And if you want to stay connected to all the real stories behind Hollywood's biggest stars, not just the headlines, but the human truth behind them, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. Because here at StarWire Daily, we believe that everyone's story matters, even the ones that break our hearts. Especially the ones that break our hearts. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep believing in second chances, and remember, your story is still being written.